Like, we're not really afraid of people, but we're kind of afraid to talk or be judged. My nose is always itchy when I'm filming. I'm not picking my nose, I swear. It is just itchy. Maybe it's like a nervous thing, but anytime I sit down to film, my nose decides it needs to be itchy. So if you see me doing this in all my videos, that's why. Hello and welcome back to another video. Today is Tuesday, May 8th. I want to apologize for not uploading last week. I didn't have a video ready because I was sick and also studying for an AP exam. In this video, I'm going to be doing part 2 of the importance of healthy communication in a relationship, because not like the last video, but the video before, I was talking about like how to have healthy communication in a relationship, but I'm going to make this one more centered around social anxiety, so like different things you can do if you have social anxiety or what to try to think about to make yourself feel better. A relationship is based on social principles, and we as humans are social creatures, so that makes it very difficult for people who have social anxiety, since, you know, the foundation of relationships is communication, and usually that's verbal, and usually that's something that we struggle with. Like, I get it, you can't seem to say what you mean even when you try your best, because a lot of the time, at least for me anyway, my mind just blanks. Like, most of the time I have an actual opinion and something I want to say, but I can't form the thought properly in my brain, and it doesn't develop into something that I can, like, actually say other than, like, yeah, I agree or whatever. Or I'm afraid I'll say something wrong, which is kind of dumb, because obviously, I'm sure we all know, there isn't really a wrong thing you can say. Like, it's your opinion, you're allowed to say what you want to say, you know? And of course it's harder if you're not already close with the person to get close with them, because you gotta get close with them by like talking to them, but you don't want to talk to them because you're anxious about talking to them. I'm gonna kind of go back through those 3 points there that I made about it being troublesome to socialize. Maybe you can't seem to say what you mean, but try your best, because the other person should be open to listening to you and want you to finish your sentence, or like want to understand what you're going through or your point of view, like having social anxiety, or just your opinion and who you are in general. Eye contact is also important. It's also troublesome for us folks with anxiety, but it's important because it like shows the actual connection you are making directly with the person, which is kind of off topic, but you know, it's still important to try to work on because it's like a soul-to-soul kind of connection. A lot of the times my friends will look at me kind of expectantly, but not in like a judgmental way, if that makes any sense. Like listening, like active listening, and they'll show it on their face that like I can finish, like they're giving me the time I need to finish my sentence, which is helpful, and that kind of ties into another point that I was gonna make, but I might as well just add it in here because it like makes sense. If you're trying to build a friendship with someone who is socially anxious, obviously it's important for you to listen to them and like let them take their time, because they might be struggling to like get through the sentence or stuttering or whatever. Like, a relationship takes 2 people, as I'm pretty sure I explained in the last video. They're probably wanting you to like speak up, like they're there for you to say the things you need to say, so if you know that, then you should have patience with yourself so you can take the time that you need to express yourself. Some people like stutter through their words also, or like I do, I tend to say like 3 words and then pause for a minute and then say another 3 words to try to like get out my thoughts. And also, it's just hard to explain your meaning when you feel pressured. Like, not that they are necessarily like adding pressure, maybe they are just by something they're doing because you feel like you need to rush to say your thing because you're taking too much time or whatever, but probably not on purpose. If it's a friendship, they're probably trying to be there for you, even if they don't know exactly how to look like they care about you while you're talking. I don't know if that makes any sense at all. But having social anxiety in general just like puts the pressure on us. Like, the anxiety is the pressure. Like, if you just allow yourself to calm down, I know that's stupid, like just calm down. It's not that easy. I get it. I'm not saying calm down, but if you allow yourself to take a minute, it might be a little easier. Again, you're afraid you'll say something wrong, but you should know that you have the right to be yourself. Was that cheesy? Definitely, but it's also true. You can have your opinion. You can say whatever you want to say, because even if the person does end up judging you, like, you can't control that, which also leads nicely into another point I was gonna make. Look at how nicely I set this up without meaning to. You can't control how they'll feel. This is something I do a ton, where I judge myself before the other person has a chance to judge me. Don't judge yourself for the other person. Like, if they're gonna judge you, let them judge you. Just like you have your own opinion, they can have their own opinions or feelings about you or whatever. It was pointed out to me, a thing that I do, because I didn't really realize it, but it actually helped me a lot so I could stop doing the thing and just like be myself comfortably, by a friend, that I tend to over-explain myself or over-present myself. Like, I try to say so much to the point where the other person doesn't get the chance to judge me or like make their own impressions of me, because I try to say so much exactly what I'm trying to say, even if it might come across like as obvious what I'm trying to say. I'll just keep going and going, which might be why my videos are so long, because I'm trying to get my point across so extensively. But essentially what I'm trying to say is that it's unnecessary, because the person, like, you know, we're all humans here. We kind of understand how communication and language works, and like if someone doesn't understand something, they'll probably say, "What do you mean by this?" Or they'll start saying something based on what you said, and then you'll say, "Oh no, I didn't mean it like that." You know, like, you can kind of change it up after if you need to and like add things in, but you don't have to say everything at once. And by over-present yourself, I mean, like, we try so hard to usually like make everything perfect, like our clothes, or because I'm focusing so hard on my body language or what to say, or like on something else, that it causes me anxiety, like I end up doing what I'm trying to avoid. As I said, it's harder if you're not already close to the person, but texting works as a good starter to get you kind of close and have some casual back and forth kind of conversation, so that way you're not like face to face with the person and you don't have the whole thing where you have to worry about the body language and how your tone's coming off and the eye contact and like the physical like space, distance, whatever, tone of voice, volume of voice, like all the things that we typically worry about, or how you look. It's just, there's so much less pressure when you are texting or messaging or whatever, because it's just the words, and the words speak for themselves, and you also have time to think through what you're trying to say. But be careful that you don't become overly dependent on it to the point where it's hard for you to talk comfortably, or as comfortably as you have been over text in person, because you're not used to being with them in person. So you kind of get to know them, and then you can have something to talk about or expand or do with them in person, because you know a little bit more about them. But yeah, like I said, you don't want to become awkward in person and like comfortable over text. Like, I've done this way too many times. Like, it's not a proper relationship. I don't know, it's not close. It doesn't have that physical, meaningful aspect then. And as I was saying, like with the casualty, you should attempt casualty like in person, at least at first. Especially with like topics, not like, "Oh, how is the weather? Isn't it lovely?" Casual, like, "How are you? How's school? How are your classes? How's work?" You know, like, or like, "What do you do for work?" And then you can kind of talk about like interests and stuff based on that. Ask them how they are and how they're feeling, and if you get asked how you are, answer honestly, because you can actually start a bunch of conversations by opening up, because you have to open up a little bit, which also leads into my next point, to not only ask about them, but talk for yourself. I get it, as socially anxious people, we don't like to talk. We would much prefer to listen and, you know, have all the attention be on the other person talking. But in order to have that actual, genuine, back and forth conversation, you have to contribute some things. So also it helps if you're honest about those things and you don't just shut yourself off completely, because I kind of talked about this also in my last video, but you like can't have a conversation with a brick wall. So that includes you. If you're the brick wall, you gotta like carve a little window in your brick wall and say, "Hey, I'm actually really stressed right now. I have an exam coming up." And then the other person might be like, "Oh, what exam? What class?" And then you'll be like, "Oh, psychology." And then you talk about psychology and be like, "Oh, I really agree with the Freudian perspective." And then all your friends can tell you you're absolutely insane and you can agree with them. See? It works. Be crazy together. In different ways. You can ask about them, and it does help, especially when you are stressed and stressing out about what to say about yourself, to get it back on them, so then you have some time to kind of think over like what you're gonna say next. But be careful. This is another little add-in, but like, don't spend so much time thinking about what you're gonna say that you're not actually listening to what they're saying, because if you listen to what they say rather than what you think you're gonna say and try to figure something out, you'll probably figure something out easier while you're listening to what they're saying, because you're like actually actively listening about them and caring about them as a person. You bring up something and be like, how do you feel about President Trump? Then you can start a real heavy political debate. You probably don't want to do that if you're aiming for like casualty, but depends how heated you get about politics. I don't know why I have all these weird examples, I'm sorry. It just shows that you have an interest in them if you want to know more about them, because you're asking, you're bringing it up. I'm over explaining how to ask a question. This is fantastic. Why am I doing this? I read a thing one time where it said that introverts don't like small talk and we prefer just to talk about the deep stuff, because the small talk is the stuff that actually stresses us out, which personally I find super accurate. But for some people, it might actually be more calming because it lowers the pressure of having to say something super interesting or like huge or revealing about your whole identity and life. You can also, however, if you can't seem to find something to talk about, because I know that's my problem, like how do you just say something without asking a bunch of really weird questions and then they give one-word answers and you give one-word answers and neither of you really know what to say or what to ask or how to communicate at all because you're new and you're scared. You should share an activity. I personally love going to Starbucks, but you know, there's only so much you can talk about at Starbucks relevant to the place that you're at, but it's still a nice place and you get some nice drinks, so that's a plus. But it is also good to hang out, like plan a casual kind of hangout, so that way you have some like one-on-one time with the person and it's scheduled. It might be more helpful because there's just like that small area of time and it's specific, like, you know, from here to here, this is the amount of time that I'm doing this thing for. Sometimes that stresses people out. Don't plan it for too long if it's like your first kind of hangout, like an hour maybe. It depends on the activity also. You could go like rollerblading at the disco. Then you can find commonalities through the thing you're both doing, because hopefully you're both enjoying it, or if you're not, you can talk about what is happening. Fear not, if this whole casual kind of, you know, slow warm up, figure out how to talk to people about normal things isn't really your vibe and it's not working for you and it's just stressing you out a whole lot more trying to be so casual. If you crack a little bit, it's okay, because you can also go to the other end of the casual, non-casual spectrum and just be completely honest and talk about your social anxiety or why you keep messing up words, or over-explain yourself as I just told you not to, but just for the pure sake of getting the other person to understand what is happening inside your head. 10 out of 10 for relatability, because I'm sure the other person has gone through something, like maybe you didn't know they were actually socially anxious and totally just judged them based on the fact that, you know, you thought they were like normal, so you just decided to open up your whole big life story about how terribly afraid you are and then expected them not to understand, but in reality they have it, and then you like totally just were like, you just like assume they were like fine, and then you're like being an asshole, you know, just saying, because I've totally done that. So or if they can't relate, hopefully they can understand because you're explaining what you're like saying, so they'll be like, oh, that makes sense, glad to hear your point of view, that makes so much more sense now, and I'm happy to understand where you are coming from, or at least try, because I am your friend and I want to understand, even if I don't, and I'm here for you, man. Solid, upfront social support, that's what you want. And also, 10 out of 10 honesty. If you don't open up, there isn't much potential for the bond to form or develop. Like, of course, opening up takes time, and it doesn't have to be with your deepest, darkest, like, secrets or problems or mental illnesses if you don't feel comfortable sharing that, obviously. But it works. It can work. And like, also, if you're comfortable enough to open up, or not comfortable necessarily, but you open up, the other person, like, they might feel safe enough or comfortable enough to open up to, like, okay, this person's sharing something really deep and personal with them. I feel like I should, or I can, or maybe it'll help them if I share something about myself, you know? So it might just kind of start that deep kind of connection conversation you gotta have sometimes. I kind of added a few more bits and pieces in here than I thought I was going to, so if this is really long, I'm sorry, but I feel like it's kind of good quality content. Well, just like based on me having social anxiety, I'm hoping this helps somebody else who has social anxiety or trouble in social situations, because I've been there and it is hard, and these are some things I've learned and would have been helpful, I feel like. Or maybe I already knew all this stuff. Even if you know what you gotta do, sometimes it's nice hearing it from another perspective, or at least I hope that's the case. So let me know if this helped you, if you want to, because it would help me to know that I helped you. Okay, thank you for watching. See you later. Bye.